Hey everybody, welcome to Scary World Pod. Today I have my friend Brad or Chad or whatever name they want to go by because they want to remain anonymous. However, they're a person who has a lot of experience working with government-funded special interests or things that have a bad rep, low-key, in the U.S. government right now. But they are an amazing resource and insanely smart and one of the most in-the-know people that I know right now who maybe has some answers, some opinions, hot takes, but we're going to get into it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Heck yeah. Chad, Brad.
Chad, Brad, Mark.
Chad, Brad, Mark, Skadad.
Skadad, yeah. Person.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to call you Daddy for the whole podcast. Okay, Daddy?
Please don't.
Okay, well,
that would be very funny, though.
Fine, at your request, I shall not call you Daddy.
Please don't.
It's a strange way to be. Because we're going to be getting into some, like, really serious topics that are no freaking joke.
Yeah. So talk about famine, Daddy.
What?
Talk about famine, Daddy.
Not famine, Daddy. Come on, famine, Daddy.
That's awful.
Slay, come on, famine, Daddy. All right. Let's get into it. I know you have some, like, notes of your own. So I wasn't sure, like, if you wanted me to start or I'll start.
Why don't you start?
Yeah?
And then I'll bounce off you. Because I kind of just wrote notes about what you sent me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. All right. So you have a lot of foreign affairs experience.
Yeah. Mostly foreign aid, development, and refugee country assistance. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how did you get involved with doing that type of work?
Honestly, it was around 2015, 2016. I had recently graduated college, and I was just seeing news about the refugee crisis in the world, and decided to do something about it. The issues surrounding foreign aid and development assistance were very motivating to me. It was something that I'm very passionate about, and I think seeing inequality does provoke a pretty strong response in me, because, like, seeing inequality in the world does really strike a chord with me as a very privileged person. It's like, okay, where I am based entirely on luck, right? Like, I don't think.
Sure. Well, we don't choose, like,
exactly.
We don't choose where we're born, how we're born, who we're born to.
And so many of the people that I work with, they're very smart, they're very kind, very good people, and just, based on where they were born, their life is in complete shambles. And just out of circumstances entirely beyond their control, or as a direct result of the actions and beliefs of a few people who have power over the lives of hundreds and thousands or millions of people. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. And then...
Well, did you study it, like, in college?
I did, and I studied it in grad school. But before that, I had just kind of volunteered for some projects and was employed by a couple of grassroots NGOs that have very, very small budgets and really operate on shoestrings. I mean, one NGO that I worked for...
What's NGO again?
Non-governmental organization.
Okay.
One NGO I worked for that operated with refugees in Europe, they worked on a $60,000 budget per year.
Wow.
Equivalent in euros, and it was pretty much all volunteer run.
Wow.
And so, a lot of these orgs, they operate extremely lean operations. They can't really afford to waste anything.
So would you say that they kind of fall into, like, a non-profit sort of category?
They are
or what
nonprofits,
type of?
yeah. I mean, there are some that are bigger, like Oxfam, International Rescue Committee, um, Save the Children, etc. These are still nonprofits, they're still NGOs.
But they're more like charity based as opposed to like.
Oh no, they are development NGOs. They're not exactly charity. Charity is, a charity gives money. They don't do field work necessarily.
I see.
So, for example, I mean, like a charity would give money to an NGO to conduct work.
Okay.
Or something like that. That's usually what the meaning of charity is. But NGOs range in size from like 10 people to something very large like the Red Cross, Oxfam, or IRC, which are three of the biggest, which probably have tens of thousands of employees.
Yeah.
Or USAID, which had tens of thousands of. How many employees did USAID? I think USAID had about 10,000 employees globally.
Had.
Had.
And how much do they think they have right now?
Up in the air.
Up in the air.
We don't know. Maybe the administration will decide to fund it again. Maybe they won't. It's a big question mark. And, technically, they do have the right to look at government spending and decide, oh, this is worth it, this is not worth it. At the same time, like that does have a lot of effects globally. And I can talk about like USAID as an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So USAID was founded during the Kennedy administration along with the Peace Corps as kind of a way to promote economic development, liberal and democratic social norms, and just community nation development.
So, like, what was the like how much of the history of USAID do you?
I'm familiar with a little bit of it. They do.
What was like the tipping point factor that like really,
I think for the Kennedy administration, I think it was probably just a way to promote what Kennedy saw as American values abroad and as another arm of diplomacy. USAID operates under the State Department, and you see like a State Department operation in a country would be like the consulate, diplomats who are kind of just watching the country, probably doing a little bit of espionage maybe, trying to influence things through deals, through diplomacy, things like that.
So would you say, I'm being hyperbolic when I ask this, but is this kind of like more of like a espionage loophole for America?
Not really. There are those accusations that like, oh, USAID is a CIA cutout. That's a gross exaggeration. Like the CIA does not need USAID to do that.
No, they do that perfectly on their own.
They do that perfectly on their own. USAID is really a way to, so it's hard to say that it is just one thing because USAID does so many different things.
Right.
So USAID, under a budget of about $68 billion a year, which sounds like a lot, but in U.S. government money, that is not that much. The U.S. military budget is close to $900 billion.
Wow.
So USAID is a drop in the bucket. And what USAID does, they do food aid, educational programming, medical aid and research. They provide grants to other NGOs. They do disease eradication. And they also have a very small project that I find very interesting, where basically they have a fund where if you are a journalist or a human rights activist in a country like with severe restrictions a freedom like Uganda, for example, and you're being hunted by the government, USAID will fly you to Nairobi until things cool down, right? They're not gonna, they don't, you know,
they're not gonna like fully fund or like be like a partisan kind of thing, but it's they do like grant programs.
Yeah, like they will, if you need to get out of your country and you are in a country where USAID works, they will help you get out of that country for a little bit so that you don't, get killed in the night.
So one interesting thing, I wasn't sure if you were allowed to talk about it. Tell me during this, and then I'll skip it if we can't. But one really interesting thing you said was that it was kind of a check as like a soft power.
Yeah. So the thing is that there are three pillars, right? There's defense, diplomacy, and development. It is a lot easier to get like certain countries on your side, right? And to do things that are in your interest,
right,
through using all three pillars instead of just relying on one, right? Because nobody likes to be coerced into doing anything.
Of course.
So like gunboat diplomacy, which is when you pull up all of your
no fighting on land, but we're gonna go fight on sea, and that's like the battleground.
Or no, gunboat diplomacy is
What is gunboat diplomacy?
It's basically when you use your military might to force other countries to do something.
Okay.
So it's like, if you don't sign this favorable trade deal with us, we're going to invade you. Or if you don't sign this favorable trade agreement with us, we're going to use our military might to mess with you, or our intelligence services to mess with you. This doesn't work in the long run because it usually just results in that country trying to figure out any possible way to get out from that deal. Interesting. Right? I mean, Russia tried it with Ukraine, gunboat diplomacy.
Okay.
See, and now there's a war on, right? That's an extreme example. It's a very extreme example.
But it is an example of what you are talking about.
That, once you engage in gunboat diplomacy, you have no other options left.
Right.
Right. And then regular diplomacy, that's also very useful, but then development, that creates conditions that you can use to develop economies, develop trade, develop society and diplomatic relations, etc. Right? You can have all the trade deals that you want in a country, but if the country is non-functioning or is a failed state, then all of the fancy diplomacy and defense agreements and economic ties don't mean anything.
Yeah.
And then also it's just working on development. It promotes goodwill. It helps the U.S. achieve things non-transactionally, which then encourages other countries to pursue not purely transactional relations with us.
Right.
And comparatively, it's very cheap. Right? USAID USAID country programs primarily use local staff.
Yeah.
Right? Because that makes the most sense. You want people who speak the language, know the culture, have the connections, and who, aren't going to want to go back to Washington, D.C. 4 times a year.
Something that was also really interesting that you mentioned was that also there's been a lot of foreign aid type things like for the Middle East that have been kind of relieving some tensions with America and Middle Eastern politics.
In the Middle East and Africa, where you have a lot of internal conflict, whether it is internal conflict between warring factions of the government, such as South Sudan, against political groups like Congo, or against religious political groups such as ISIS. USAID is very useful because I'm going to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
So the example that I came up with, and this is also an example that people use to say that humanitarian aid is useless, but I'm going to turn it back around on them, I guess, sort of. So you ever hear
See, humanitarian aid is not useless.
Yeah,
is what you're
exactly.
trying to say.
So you know the whole like teach a man to or give a man a fish, he'll be dependent on you forever. Teach him how to fish, he'll never be hungry again.
Yeah.
That only works if that guy has the resources to build a fishing rod, the peace and quiet to build a fishing rod in peace, and if there are fish in the water, right? So if your country's crazy corrupt, if the government doesn't control most of the country or only controls the capital.
Yes.
So take Congo.
Yeah.
Right? There are certain parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo that are just not in the government's control. Right?
Sure.
Either ISIS or another jihadist offshoot who has sway in that area, or the M23 rebel group just took over a massive part of Congo. The government can do whatever they want, but they are not in those areas. They cannot provide services in those areas. So who is providing services in those areas? It's either international NGOs or these malign insurgent groups.
What's that?
Malign, like an insurgent group like ISIS, M23, Hezbollah, Hamas.
So for the Americans out there, the terrorist organizations.
The terrorist organizations, some of them.
The foreign terrorist organizations.
Yes. And you don't want people to be completely reliant on armed factions for social services, right? That is very bad in general. And I'm telling you right now, USAID running a food program or school or recreational children's content like Sesame Street in some of these places is a whole lot cheaper than drone strikes.
And donations to PBS, NPR.
Yeah, exactly.
Publicly owned nonprofit educational programming.
Yeah, and right, and also things like drone strikes, kinetic warfare, that does breed resentment it can breed resentment amongst the civilian population.
Right.
USAID is not going to breed resentment amongst the civilian population.
Right, because they don't have any actual.
There are no civilian casualties.
They're basically the most unbiased. Organizational effort.
Yeah, and
that at least America has to offer.
And the thing is that the insurgent groups, for example, if they say no to USAID, well, then they're the bad guy. Then they have to explain to the people who they're in charge of why they're not providing services, right? So it's a win-win, and it makes America look good, and it makes people like us.
And also not just that, but America loves colonizing. That's our whole. Yeah. That's our whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
So it's okay, well, what is the best way to sneak in our little colonization agenda is by special interesting ourselves into it. So if you want to be what's the good part, like how do you empathetic snowflake bullshit, what's really good about it is okay, well, it promotes Western ideals, which is what you want Western colonization. You think America's fucking great, you think European things are great. Well, why don't we spread that sentiment? This is a way to spread our agenda and propaganda across the globe, and now we're losing that So there it is from the devil's advocate side of it all.
That is it.
So it really is bipartisan and does work for a liberal agenda and a conservative agenda if you're really fucking looking into it.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, with food aid, we have so many corn and grain farms in this country.
Yeah.
A lot of that corn and grain goes to USAID as food aid. And it helps keep these farmers in business.
Right.
It also helps control the price of grain and corn and things like that in America.
Not to mention the over farming problem that we have had for a very long time. Because you have to have somewhere to sell or donate that overflow to, so it doesn't just go to waste and rot.
Yeah, totally. And also then, if you can't sell it, the price crashes.
Right.
Right,
which ruins farmers. And
yeah.
But I guess that's part of the agenda now, is that like, okay, well, we're gonna screw these farmers over, I guess, to so that like big companies like Purdue and Tyson and all of these.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those farmers work for Purdue and Tyson, honestly.
Or they sell to them. They're one of the wholesale, I guess, vendors.
Like, I mean,
suppose,
Purdue,
right?
Tyson, all of these big farming companies are also opposed to closing USAID because they make a lot of money off of that.
Right.
And then.
Well, it funds the farmers that they buy their
the grain
stuff from.
Yeah. And
but they're saying that like all these farms could be company owned instead of like independently owned.
Are they?
Well, there's some. From what I understand, as of the knowledge that I have at this moment in time, is that these big companies like Tyson and Purdue, that's just off the top of my head. There's a bunch of other, bigger, bigger companies that have poultry and all types of stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have their own like large scale farms that are like overpopulated, used, and just like crowded. The plus of getting things from smaller farmers that are family owned and things like that. Like that's a long-standing like kind of family tradition type of job, and a lot of these smaller family farms are going like under basically, and so the idea is that they want to put these family farms and that have all of this land and all of this livestock, or if it's like a vegetation farm.
Yeah.
They have all that fertile soil and land and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the money to keep producing after they sell it off, or they don't have anybody to sell it to, and all the crops go bad and things like that, or the livestock gets sick and dies, then these lower wage, smaller family farms don't have like a backup of money or investment or anything like that. So they would have no choice but to sell it to these big companies, so that they diversify where their farms are. Yeah. So they're thinking that it's going to be more like turning these companies into like monopoly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that, but that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I learned about like certain like things. Like I know your thing is more like foreign affairs. Like you know things about foreign affairs, but that's also like part of like why it's also bad for these smaller farms and all of these things, because like they're trying to diversify where they have all these like pieces of their company and farms and stuff, and but also it's getting too expensive too, because now of course one thing leads to another. Like we have immigration, and a lot of these immigrants are not coming to work anymore because they're afraid that they're going to get like deported. Yeah. So a lot of these farms are also going under because of lack of labor.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
that's definitely part of it.
You're trying not to touch the mic.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Gotcha. And then But
yeah, anyway, sorry.
No
Getting back
problem.
on track, but yeah, farming is one thing that is also affected by getting rid of USAID
Yeah.
and the food supply,
Oh,
or at
absolutely.
least in
In
country
country.
food supply,
Yeah.
but also out country too,
Also out
because
country.
there's some there's some food that our country isn't even we can't even actually grow ourselves unless it's like hydroponic.
Yeah.
I would say in a controlled environment, but how many hydroponic farms are we willing to build fresh and new in this country?
Yeah, absolutely.
That are all that have the right technology, technology that doesn't have like poisonous water. Even it's like controlled.
Yeah.
And then some of these families that are farming for generations, they don't know about hydroponics.
No. And also, some of those countries that produce some of the food that we eat without USAID, they might go under. Some of them.
Right.
And then also, like, one thing I was reading was that there was a complaint that, okay, we were putting on Sesame Street in Palestine, or like,
Well, just other countries, because they have Israeli Sesame Street, they have Palestinian Sesame
USAID
Street.
funded Palestinian Sesame Street,
Right.
or I think it was Palestinian or Syrian Sesame Street.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Sesame Street all falls under the same thing. So there's all different iterations of Sesame Street all over the world.
Yeah. But this was, or we funded like.
Right. This is specifically for a country that doesn't necessarily have like a lot of funding for their own educational programming.
And recreational programming, like community theater productions, like USAID threw a couple of $1,000s at some of these projects, right? Like they'll throw $6,000 at a community theater in
which is
Gambia.
still educational. The arts are very important, arts and humanities.
Some communities, and part of the reason that this sort of thing is important is like, say you take a community that has been riven by or like wrecked by civil war, intercommunal violence, and you want to build a well, or you want to build like a water plant or a school or something. And you pick a piece of land and they're like, oh, well, you can't build it there because this ethnic group took it from that ethnic group. So that ethnic group says. But then ethnic group B says, actually, no, this was ours like 100 years ago or like 50 years ago. So it's actually ours and we just took it back. So if you build a school here, it's our school, not theirs, right?
Sure.
But you put on a community theater production, you put on like a circus or something, some like community recreational thing, and then everyone's kids want to go.
Right.
Oh.
So it's more of like a unifying
a lot of these
goal,
projects, like
right?
these so-called wasteful recreation, community building, or educational, or like children's
humanities related public services,
like humanities related USAID grants.
Yeah.
A lot of those things are about building social cohesion in places that don't have a lot of social cohesion. It's almost like, I understand why people see stuff like that and they immediately think, what the hell? Because they don't think about it from like a post-conflict society standpoint.
Right.
Because they've never lived in a place like that.
Right.
They've never worked in a place like that. They don't know people from places like that. It's like, no, sometimes that is the most you can do because people need to start trusting each other again. And if their kids all want to go to the same thing and their kids all go to the same thing, the parents are going to start talking.
Right.
And then eventually, person from ethnic group or religious group B or political group B is going to talk to person from group A and they're going to be like, okay, yeah, I can live next to you. Maybe not, but it's a start. And it's the same thing. It also reminds me of like when people were criticizing like US food aid packages for having Skittles in them, right? And yeah, Skittles in food aid packages, along with, regular nutritious food, are pretty good because kids like candy and they're high in calorie content.
And also, it's let's also put it out there. It's also like a shareable
Yeah, it's
kind
a
of a
shareable
thing as well.
Yeah.
So it can also be used as like a bonding thing.
Yeah.
And, like as somebody who has like, Middle Eastern ethnic ties and stuff, like we fucking love food. We
Yeah.
bond over hummus.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the only thing I could even bond with, someone else, with is like how much we fucking like hummus.
Exactly.
At the bottom line of it. So, there's a lot of factors that also go into like, that they provide social cohesion a little bit and yeah.
Absolutely. And like people, because like you're not an aid worker necessarily, you might not think about these things. But a lot of these things do have a purpose. Now, of course, any large bureaucracy, there's going to be waste, fraud, abuse. Name me a company with over 10,000 employees that doesn't have any waste.
Right.
Like, you will not be able to do that. And so, yes, should the government look at aid money? Yeah, I mean, we should have, but then again, it's whether they're going to do anything about it, right? Like there were so many audits of Pentagon and US government and State Department spending in Afghanistan that went nowhere.
Right.
Because there was not the political there just wasn't the will in government to do anything about it.
Right.
But, USAID is a very valuable thing. And it's not just the things that I've mentioned, because say you don't care about anything that any of the humanitarian stuff that I was talking about. There's still the soft power aspect. There's still the economic aspect. And there's also the health aspect.
Yeah.
USAID does do, through grants and through their own work, a lot of disease eradication and medical aid. Right? You do not want Ebola outbreaks.
No.
You don't want AIDS to start spreading more.
No.
You don't want malaria, all of these diseases, because we do live in a completely globalized world. COVID showed that. You can lock down the entire country. It's still going to spread all over the place.
I mean, it started in a city in China, made its way all the way over to all of the U.S.
Yeah, and like it made its way to Nunavut, Canada.
Yeah.
Which is one of the least populated places in the world.
Which is insane.
Yeah, like the only place that was really able to get it under control was New Zealand, because they're a tiny little island.
That's like literally around no one.
Yeah, right.
Anywhere. Like you have to take like a plane to get there, if not like a boat if you live even remotely closer. And
even it came back there too. Like it is disease eradication. If you have if your government has the ability to do it, you should be doing it, because it helps you and it helps everyone in the world. And USAID was working on a project that now no longer exists, where they were providing drugs to mothers in certain parts of Africa so that the mothers would not pass on HIV to their children.
So it was aid for, what was it called? Not geriatric. What's the opposite of geriatric?
Neonatal?
No. Well, I guess you could call it neonatal. Pediatric. Sorry.
Pediatric, yeah.
Yeah.
It do a lot of that.
Yeah, it's eradication of pediatric AIDS.
USAID does do a lot of that.
Right.
But, this program basically prevented, I think the official stats were that there were 250,000 women in this program. Mm-hmm. So that's at least 250,000 kids who through this program would not be born with HIV.
Right.
And, I'll let the listener, infer what's going to happen to those kids now that this program no longer exists.
Well, just to kind of put out there, because I know a little bit about like pediatric AIDS and work with that. And I've done a lot of philanthropy work with the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. There are still other like nonprofits that do get a lot of donations to help with that.
Yeah.
So it is not 100% like doom and gloom, but it will be harder for these smaller nonprofits to keep up without the
But also, there's now a
Right.
gap in care,
right.
which
Exactly.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that's going to do, but it can't be good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that a lot of these smaller nonprofits, like they got a lot of their funding from USAID, and a lot of
Correct.
big nonprofits got their funding through USAID.
Correct.
Because it's more efficient for USAID to do these things through other organizations, especially local organizations.
Right.
Because, a hotshot Washington, D.C. aid worker is like probably going to get paid more than a local, because the local, they get paid like a salary based on the economy in which they live.
Right.
Which, there is criticism of that. It's not exactly fair. But at the same time, there is a reason why most of these programs are staffed by locals, and part of it is money, and then part of it is also like they're better at the job.
Right.
And they have, they have more invested in the job. And I think, all of what I've said kind of goes back to like lessening chaos in the world. And, I'm just going to say it very easy or very simply. Bad actors, insurgent groups, dictatorships, terrorist groups, etc. They love chaos because they get to prey on that.
Right.
In Lebanon, Hezbollah basically controls entire parts of that country, and they are the service provider in those parts.
Yeah.
Right? They run the school, they run the hospital, they run sanitation, they run all of that, and that is not a good system.
Right.
Because that basically is buying people's loyalty to a political project.
But also aren't what America would call terrorist organizations, homegrown militias.
Yeah.
Like these are, I get how does it make that any different than like the colonialists that came over to America and said we're going to make a Declaration of Independence?
Oh yeah, sure. What I'm saying is that
are they less smart? Are they just less rich? Like what's the difference between it all?
Theoretically,
like why is their colonization not as successful as American colonization in 1780? Ugh.
Oh, because it's not just we're gonna run around with guns and smallpox and destroy everything, right?
Sure.
And then theoretically, like USAID is supposed to be nonpartisan, right? Like that's why, USAID provided food aid to North Korea.
Yeah.
So every time someone's like, oh, it's partisan, I'm like, okay, we gave food aid to North Korea. Or not we, USAID gave food aid to North Korea. So theoretically, it's calling USAID completely nonpartisan is not true. But
it's more with a focus of like what gives us the most positive for humanitarian aid and humanitarian causes.
Yeah, and just
positive humanitarian causes.
More stability. And then the opposite approach to USAID would be something, not totally opposite, would be something that is really purely transactional development, such as China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Okay.
Right? So China builds a port in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sri Lanka is in debt to China.
Yeah.
And China gets a cut of the profits from the port to pay off that debt. And they keep on doing this, and they do this all over the world. Mm-hmm. And in some places, like Congo, they buy the mines. And then they have mercenary groups in Congo to guard the mines.
Okay.
It's things like that. This is purely transactional. It is, we give you development project, infrastructure projects, you give us cuts of the resources from them.
So it's also used as like a trade bargaining
chip a little bit. It's a trade, but it is a very unequal trade.
Yeah.
Right? Because China's economy versus Congo's economy is very different.
Yeah.
And some Americans might say, that sounds a lot better. That seems like it's a better bang for our buck. It's really not, because all of these countries are in debt to China.
Yeah.
And they cannot pay that debt back anyway.
Well, aren't we also in debt to China? That's why the debt ceiling is so high. I mean, part of that is borrowed shares from China.
Yeah. But, like, for example, that port in Sri Lanka, it's never going to, like, Sri Lanka is never going to be able to pay back China. And
no, not in a million fucking years.
Maybe one day, but, like, not now.
They're very small. In comparison to China, China's huge.
Yeah. No, I mean, but for the port, because China built the port for them.
Yeah, but also in turn, I mean, China gets something out of it in general.
They get a cut, but it's not enough to cover the debt. So it's still like, even in the Chinese model, the Belt and Road Initiative model, that's literally, you get less. Maybe you get slightly more in, like, tangible money, but it's still a drop in the bucket.
Right.
You get less of the untangible benefits or the intangible benefits. You get less of the goodwill. You get.
So that's like the gray area.
That's the gray area.
Like weighing out the positives and negatives and the goods and the evils. Like, will this actually provide more good than it will evil if we give into this sort of thing? How, what will we get back out of it?
And then the other thing, like, say, because the question is, do Americans care? Excuse me. The question is, do Americans care about human rights, global development, global well-being, global stability? And you will get so many different answers if you did a survey that were American. A lot of Americans don't care.
Right. Why would they?
Exactly.
I mean.
But they should. And, if they don't, okay, whatever. It's their right. But you get rid of USAID. China's extremely happy about that, because now they get to do Belt and Road Initiative all over the place.
So there's really so USAID is also kind of used as a bit of a check on other countries' investments and their own projects.
Yeah, because now there's a giant hole. So if China goes in, they're going to be able to get very favorable deals on their own projects, on their Belt and Road Initiative in places that America is now pulling out of, or pulling USAID out of, because these countries still need assistance. And
I've also heard that, like, China potentially, or like Russia, or just like bigger countries, all of the, like, innovation that was being funded out here, like, like different researches for different medications and cures for illnesses and technologies and things. I heard that there's a potential that other countries around the world are going to bring those people in.
Maybe.
And buy those people to, like,
work on their projects.
Work on their projects, or finish up their projects in their country and not in America, or funded by America, so that America doesn't have access to that sort of thing.
Or they have to buy it.
Yeah, or America's going to have to buy it. Yeah, because they could have had the patent and then they just don't.
And it's just USAID is a good thing, and it's also partially like giving back. Like, you were right. We did do a lot of things that maybe, like, America shouldn't have done, and USAID is kind of a way to mitigate some of the harms of climate change, mitigate some of the harms of war.
And also used to maybe be like, well, as a country on the forefront, we can't make amends, but we have this soft power that can hopefully, like, help make amends and keep the peace in some way, shape, or form.
And, Ronald Reagan said, the starving child knows no politics. And that's true. Yeah. Right? Not to hand it to Ronald Reagan, but, like, the starving child knows no politics. And I hope the administration sees the value of USAID. I know there are people in the Trump administration who see the value of USAID. I'm sure, like, Trump has funded aid projects during his first term. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that USAID will be back in some form. I'm sure he can be convinced because, again, like, these are some very compelling arguments. Like,
Or at least reinstate it.
at least reinstate it.
Yeah.
Like, because, you know, I mean, no one wants an Ebola outbreak,
No.
right? And, like, I know Trump hates germs. So
He hates germs. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke.
exactly.
Like,
So, like,
he
come
seems
on,
to
man.
be a very healthy guy despite his McDonald's
Yeah. Hey, man.
and fast food obsession.
McDonald's is the fourth pillar of U.S. soft power.
Wow, that's a big statement to say.
All right, I'm telling you right now, McDonald's is the fourth pillar of U.S. soft power. So, you know, more power to McDonald's.
You know what? Screw
I
it, yeah.
guess.
All right, so we're gonna go on to the. Did you have any other points?
I mean, not more power to McDonald's. I don't actually eat McDonald's, but
I don't eat McDonald's either, and
but
I
they are
don't touch
the fourth pillar of U.S. diplomacy.
I mean, they do have the Ronald McDonald House that
They
is very
do have a McDonald's in almost every country.
They
Even
do.
countries that don't have McDonald's have knockoff McDonald's.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
I find very funny, and I would kind of want to see all of the knockoff McDonald's in the world.
straight up.
But I think last point is just, you know, you can enter the world with force and just one-to-one transactions, and that's only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
And USAID helps take care of, or honestly, like, USAID helps a lot. And I would say that and diplomacy are really the most important of the three pillars. Because defense, if you've got to resort to military power, several things have broken down along the way, right?
Absolutely.
War and military action is politics at its most extreme, and you want to avoid ever getting to that point, both morally, ethically, economically, everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So since this is a very different type of conversation
Yes.
than I usually have with a bunch
Yeah.
of my other guests that I have on the show, the way that we're going to do our little discourse session is
Mhm.
going to be more based on your personals of whatever you want to
Okay.
kind of bring up. So we're mostly doing it through question.
Mhm.
But yeah, here's
Love
my
discourse.
here's my watered down discourse questions
Okay.
for you. All right. First thing we're going to cover. What is your most right-wing opinion?
All right. So
American right-wing opinion.
I
just
think
to-
all electric bikes should have license plates.
Ooh.
And if you're on the sidewalk with an electric bike, unless you are driving, unless you are just parking right outside of a place of business, and if you drive on the sidewalk for any length of time with an electric bike, you should get taken away.
Wow.
Hey, I have been almost run over so many times.
Wow. So you
Yeah.
are anti-bike.
No, I am not
Bicycles-
anti-bike.
Oh, okay.
Like, I love biking
You just think bicyclists should be in more trouble for the things that they do.
sometimes.
Okay. What is your most fascist opinion?
That's it. I can't answer that. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I literally, that's too political. Yeah.
Oh, word.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so we're gonna cut
We're gonna cut
that
that
one
one
out.
out, yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, what's your most socialist opinion? We're going to the other side of the spectrum.
Universal healthcare.
Period.
Yeah, universal healthcare. That's it. Period. Which isn't even that socialist. Let's be real.
It really isn't. It's actually like a human right.
Yeah.
Um,
Or even it's just in the national interest. If you have the money to do universal healthcare, you should. It frees. I mean, I'm so used to justifying myself to people who are not liberals or on the left, but say you want entrepreneurship or something, you want people to start their own businesses, universal healthcare is a great way to do that, because then they don't have to worry about health insurance, like if they're sick or they have kids or
Yeah.
they have a spouse who's sick or has kids, like, or they have dependents of any kind, or they're just worried about getting hit by a bus one day.
Yeah. Well, also, how about the fact that like you'll probably have better if you don't care about worker retention, how about just worker effectiveness?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll have better worker effectiveness for your businesses.
Yeah.
And also, like, what goes along with it as well that I think is important is like health education.
Yeah.
Health education is really, really important. Like, that's something that I like hyper focused on to like even learn more about myself.
Oh yeah.
Which there's more information now. Like, you have to figure out what the correct information is.
Oh my god, yeah.
You know, and siphon through and figure out what
Just
works
like,
for you.
You're watching YouTube videos and you see so much health misinformation just on like YouTube ads.
It took me 2 years to figure out what type of vitamins I needed to live like the most productive lifestyle that I could possibly live. And like, I'm still figuring it out. Because you find out that there's one thing that like actually makes you lose your hair over time, and you're like, oh well, I guess I should stop taking that. And then you find out like, oh, this is great for my brain. Oh, but the side effect of this overtaking this for the next year and a half, 2 years is going to be this and that. It's like,
My most authoritarian opinion
is
that
okay.
AI voices on TikTok, Instagram, any social media, banned.
Well, that's not authoritarian.
Just out of pure annoyance.
Well, that's not authoritarian. That's actually like that's more of like a humanitarian.
Because
thing.
I see, like, my mom will be watching a video and I'll be like, Mom, you know that voice is AI, right? And she'll be like, really?
Damn.
And like now she's gotten good at like figuring out what's AI and what's not.
Yeah.
Because she's seen enough of it. But at first she like didn't know that she was listening to an AI voice. I'm like, Mom.
Also, it's like you can tell like with the faces and stuff too. Like some people's faces like don't move, the eyes don't move correctly.
Too many
like,
teeth.
Too many teeth, or no lower teeth.
Yeah.
Is also one of them.
Yeah. I saw a really bad taste AI video the other day. But I completely forgot what it was.
Oh my.
But someone was just like, why would you do this? It was like they were depicting a person who died like horribly.
Oh my god.
Or something like that, and it was like how life would be for this person if this didn't happen. It's like, what? And
it's like an AI simulation of like how that would look.
Yeah, it's like, what is wrong with you?
That's horrific. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's also horrific.
Oh, did you hear that there was this thing in South Korea where this lady who like lost her child?
What?
This lady lost her child.
To what?
An accident or like a car crash, like sickness, something like that. So this company used, like, she paid this company. Or I don't know if she paid them or if they did this for her for free, but they took all of like the photos and videos she had of her kid.
Yeah.
And then created an AI virtual reality.
Wow.
Put her in like an Oculus Rift or you know, virtual reality goggles so that she can meet her kid again.
Wow.
And yeah, no, don't watch the video of it. It's of her reaction. It's like terrifying. Like, she should not have done this.
Wow.
This would like break you. Like, she was a little broken psychologically.
It's also kind of like, it's like dissonant. Like I feel like we're not.
Yeah.
Like we have not evolved. I think, or some people.
We're supposed to evolve that.
Well, I mean, that's arguably. I think we are supposed to evolve to be able to accept certain technologies and be able to work certain technologies. So, I mean, I believe that like over time, humans are supposed to evolve, as most living things do evolve, you know, and adapt. But I just think like maybe someone who's older than us
Yeah.
doesn't have the capacity to evolve maybe the way that me and you do because
Yeah.
we're younger.
Well, I mean, it's weird because technically we do have the same brain we did like 10,000 years ago.
I mean, yeah.
But
But
we're an adaptive species.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I always like to think about this. Like my great grandmother, she died at 93 years old, born in like I think like 1914 or something like that. Like she survived the Holocaust. She came to America. Like all that. My one of my first phones was the Voyager, and they had a touch screen. My great grandmother, she could not for the life of her understand how a touch screen even worked, and she was legitimately scared of it.
That's
Yeah, I told her, I was like, look, you touch it and it works. And she's like, she like didn't want anything to do with it. She was like scared of it. And this is a lady who's like, she's had a cell phone her whole life, like since cell phones were a thing, and like she's always talked on the phone. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
the touch screen, she was just
But
like, that's weird.
The touch screen wigged her out.
That's interesting. I mean, your brain does lose like plasticity over time.
I
Like
mean, yeah, but she was pretty with it.
yeah.
She was pretty with it, and I had like I had other grandparents that were like maybe like 20, 30 years younger than her, and they used an iPad.
Oh, okay.
Like they knew how to use a computer.
Some
all of
Facebook
that.
grandmas.
So my last surviving grandmother right now, she's on Facebook all the time.
Of course.
All the time she's on Facebook. She loves the internet, doesn't understand it sometimes, so I think there is like a little bit of a neuroplasticity kind of a loss because she used to be a little bit better at it, but then again, like,
the internet's changed a lot.
The internet changed a lot, so I think it's sometimes hard to keep up with like what that change is. But
do you want to hear my most cancelable opinion?
Okay, what is your most crucifiable?
Okay.
What's your most crucifiable opinion?
If you park in a crosswalk, license taken away, jail.
Park in a crosswalk?
Park in a crosswalk.
I don't think anyone should park in a crosswalk. Although I'm guilty of parking in the crosswalk sometimes.
I see it so many times at my local train station.
Wow.
Right as I'm trying to get off the train, and I'm like, jail.
Wow.
That's my harshest take.
Park in a crosswalk.
Park in a crosswalk, jail.
And you know what? Like that's kind of like an easy fix too. Like you can just make more parking somehow. So that people don't have to be in the crosswalk. So it's essentially not always even the pedestrian's fault.
Sometimes, like literally, I mean, in my train station, there's tons of parking.
Yeah.
It's just that people are lazy and they don't want to cross the street.
Terrible.
Also, I think that intersections should have speed bumps.
All intersections?
Almost.
I think that's actually your most crucifiable opinion.
I know, it's a horrible opinion. If I were an elected official and I tried to do that, I would be dragged out of office.
Speed bumps is actually fucking cruel because you're actively like, I want to ruin everyone's car.
Yeah.
That's crucifiable. That's fucking evil.
No, I'm kidding.
No, you're not.
As a driver, I'm kidding.
No, you're not. You're not kidding.
Am I? That's sometimes you have an opinion that will never work practically, but you wish it could.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I you know what? I was going to say I humbly disagree with you. No, I vehemently disagree with you.
That's fine. I disagree with myself all the time. Yeah.
Son of a gun.
I know.
Well,
I try.
I hope everybody learned something from this podcast. I surely learned a lot.
Everything that I said that was worthwhile just got wiped out by that statement.
Yeah, no, you kind of fucked it all up there.
Yeah, everyone's going to be like, you know what, let's defund USAID.
Well, that's why I do the hot topics.
Yeah, like everyone is going to be like, yeah.
You know what, this guy lost all credibility.
Yeah, this guy lost all credibility. I don't trust
done.
the word they say.
Well, thank you.
He says, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark, Brad, whatever name you want to go
Brad,
by.
Chad.
Mark, Brad, Chad, Daddy-O.
Brad, Hunter, all the white guy names.
Yeah. Insert white guy name here.
Braxton.
Who the
Skylar.
fuck is Braxton? But all right.
Yeah.
That concludes this episode of Scary World Pod. I hope everybody learned something from this episode. I sure did. I also got a little bit mad at the end, but fuck it.
I'm kidding.
We out here in the streets. No, you are not kidding. You stand on business.
No.
Okay, goodbye.